What if? You woke up tomorrow and you felt different. What if? You began to question what others haven't noticed. What if? I began to have experiences I could not explain at a very young age. Our worldview is filled with intrigue, wonder, adventure, and of course, mysteries. However, there are some situations that we cannot fully explain, and it's time we open up this dialogue and talk about our experiences. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Welcome to Haunted Mysteries. Welcome to Haunted Mysteries Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. This show will air every other week on the Get Haunted Podcast Network. So sit back and relax, and if you miss it, go to the Get Haunted Podcast Network Facebook page or to my YouTube channel under Haunted Mysteries Podcast. Spend an hour every other week with us, delving into what most of us are chasing after, answers to unexplained happenings. This show brings you a bit of chatter, topics, theories, guest interviews, and more. May you be a believer in cryptids, apparitions, UFOs, consciousness abilities, or anything else. Know that there is another person out there who has experienced something similar or a bit stranger. It's not always in our imagination. This episode is pre-recorded. Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for joining me for yet another episode of Haunted Mysteries Podcast. My name is Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. I am the host and the producer of this show. Today we have with us Brooke Ashley. She is a evidential medium. I would say she's got pretty much all the clairs that she feels relatively skilled in, and she's also a paranormal investigator. We talked an awful lot on this show tonight about all kinds of scenarios, and I think you're going to find her to be quite interesting. Please welcome to the show my special guest this evening, Brooke Ashley. Our guest today is Brooke Ashley. Brooke is an evidential medium and paranormal investigator who has spent the last 5 years training with some of the most respected mediums in the field. With a passion for bringing healing and validation through spirit communication, she travels the country offering gallery readings that provide comfort, closure, and evidence that our loved ones never truly left us, but simply walking aside us. Alongside her mediumship, Brooke is an investigator with Earthly Imprint Paranormal, where she blends her intuitive abilities with hands-on research of the unexplained. She leads events that not only showcase evidential mediumship, but she also guides participants through life paranormal investigations across the United States and is a frequent presenter at metaphysical and paranormal conventions. We had a lot to talk about this evening, so sit back and enjoy yourself as we have a wonderful discussion with my guest, Brooke Ashley. Well, welcome, Brooke, to the show. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, really excited to have you. My goodness. It's been a little bit. I finally got her on the roster, and I think you're going to find our conversation tonight to be very, very, maybe spooky, but certainly interesting. So, Brooke, let's get started because I know this is going to be a fast hour here. I want you to just kind of brief people a little bit. We had a little bit in the introduction here about you, but why don't you just tell people a little bit about yourself, anything you want, basically, and then we'll move it in from there.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a Washingtonian born and raised, and from a young age, I've been kind of interested in the paranormal because as it comes to you and you don't really ask for it and you think it's normal, that's kind of been my background since a young kid. So I just kind of grew up in this space where it's kind of interesting. It's like trauma meets psychic abilities. So I was adopted at the age of 4, and me and my sister both kind of have abilities, and we grew up together, kind of trying to navigate that as a team as we got older.
Mm-hmm. You know, one thing I was going to, you're the first person I think that I've ever interviewed that is or has been an adoptee. And what makes that interesting to me is wondering about, I'm going to just say your biological roots, or because at that age, when you get adopted, I don't know, do you remember a lot about your family upbringing, and that's how it turned out to be getting adopted from somebody else because there was a lot of unrest? Or did you get adopted and then just come to realize that these individuals were not your biological family?
Right. For me, it was kind of one of the more rare stories where I was 4 when I got adopted and my sister was 7. So we had been in that environment, and remember our previous life, it's kind of like having 2 lives in one. It really is 2 totally different energies, you know? So I did grow up knowing my roots, stories of my birth parents, actually even having visitation rights with my father's side of the family, my birth father's side of the family, because they were who was taking care of us before we got adopted, was my grandparents on my father's side. So we came with the knowledge of our past, for sure.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Did you know, though, at the time, do you know, let's go with your biological roots here first. Do you know if they had any types of abilities that you would have acquired and then came to realize? Or do you think circumstances awakened your abilities, and this is why things started out the way they did for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because to me, it's both. I know that my father, my birth father, is highly psychic, a little bit mystical in that way. And he got it from his father, who was my favorite person in the whole world before he passed away, my grandpa. Very mediumistic, but a very quiet man. So I did get it genetically from that side, which is interesting because it's the men in my family, not the women. But the trauma that I endured before I got adopted put me in a position energetically to have to be on edge at all times to understand people's intentions around me. So I think that breaks open the psychic abilities because you need it to survive.
Yeah. Very interesting you brought that up. Yes, exactly. Most of us only know us to have so I went through a life of, I'm going to call them mini traumas. I mean, there are some points that were really traumatic. This, where the fear was just, I don't know, just everything just kind of hit me. And then people talk all the time about the pineal gland up here expanding, rewiring itself to a place where somehow it awakens and opens up your abilities a little bit more. What would you say about that? Because that's really the only foundation or the reference point that a lot of people that at least I talk to refer to. Oh, there must have been something, things got rewired, and then all of a sudden it went right into the right channel where all of a sudden you're kind of like a lighthouse. What are your thoughts about all that?
I agree in those aspects. So I know that that's probably a very scientific approach to explaining what's going on there. So I feel like it's true in the fact that trauma does rewire you, absolutely rewires you. But I feel like there's a very energetic space to that as well. And I feel like the mind and the body and the soul are not really all that separate. They have their own purpose, but we always talk about mind, body, soul, mind, body, soul. So when we're talking about that, well, the mind and the pineal gland and your body is a part of that. It's a part of that journey. It's a part of that soul journey. So I feel like it's kind of all one and the same. So trauma absolutely rewires your brain. It's scientifically proven it rewires your brain, but it also opens you energetically to a space where when you have these traumas, you have to be so hyper attuned to everything around you. You become so hyper attuned, and that to me is an energetic space. So it's kind of a combination of all of them, I think. So they all have merit, Yeah.
That's interesting. What I found interesting too is you mentioned your grandfather and your father having abilities. What kind of abilities do you recall or do you think that they had?
With my father, I didn't quite have a relationship with him until I became an adult. So probably around the age of 19, I started hanging out with him again. He would get together with me and we would go, when I turned 21, go have a drink or something. He's a Harley rider. He's a giant kid at heart. He's never going to grow up, So we would go have a drink and hang out as friends, because we built a friendship. And he would say things to me that he shouldn't know. And then he would get a smile on his face. And I would be like, you, right? And my adoptive mother, who's very open. Luckily, she's kind of like a little mini hippie on the inside. She's a little free range parent, my adoptive mom. And she always talked to me about my grandfather because she knew him well, because he's one of the people she adopted me and my sister from him and his wife. And would talk about, when we would talk about psychic abilities or we would talk about mystical things, she would always put her 2 cents in that she really thought it was coming from Roy, my grandfather, because he really gave that energetic to her, and he kind of seemed to have be attuned to a lot of things going on around him, and without really needing to say much. So a lot of that I feel came from my adoptive mom talking about my grandfather, and then I saw it in my dad. So I was like, that has to be it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and you're right. A lot of people have mentioned that they think that a lot of times this comes from the maternal side of the family. And I know that when I've been asked this question myself, I just recently learned from a cousin that this discussion about abilities and sensitivities actually may have been on the maternal side, on my mother's side. However, my father's side, I know that there was extreme sensitivities there. And I also knew, unless they're very cheap, when my grandparents were dabbling in what is called touch doctors, and maybe they're just too cheap to go to a regular doctor or didn't want to spend the money or whatever, they were believers in what was called touch doctors. And it's kind of like, I don't think a lot of people in my family, I come from a big family, really knew that or really understood that. And as time went on, I'm like, I really wonder where all this came from. And unless, again, it had something to do with just being really tight and cheap and not wanting to spend the money for, conventional medicine or however you want to refer to it as. So, it's not every day you meet somebody who says, my grandfather had some type of abilities. Then you wonder where he got it from. Did you ever find out anything about that?
No, unfortunately, my grandpa was a very quiet man. We didn't know much about him. It was more of like, it was weird. It was more of like an energetic relationship between me and my grandpa. I could feel the love, but I just don't even remember him speaking, which
Yeah.
is odd. It's like, why can't I remember him talking or his voice? And I feel like, I kind of just energetically feel or like intuitively feel like it must have come from his mother because I feel very close to her too. And I never met her. Nobody did really, I don't think, because she died when my grandpa was like 19, I
Oh,
think.
wow. Mm-hmm.
So, but I just feel energetically drawn to her. She was a Titus. So if you've ever heard of Titusville in Pennsylvania, that's my great grandma. So she's genetically related back to that. But I feel very close to that side of the family, and I just feel close to her energetically. So it kind of makes you wonder if you're already a psychic medium and you feel energetically drawn to a specific ancestor that you didn't know, what's drawing you there, you know?
Where did you say that was located?
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, someone just looked at my website from Titusville, Pennsylvania, and I've never had that anyone ever looked from there before. Don't
That's
you?
wild.
Don't you find that to be a little? Just bringing that up, when I first saw that, I'm like, is that really a town? That was the first question. But there's a crazy number of names for towns out there if you really want to get into it. But I just looked at that and I said, is this real? And yeah, I know. And I was just in Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago for in the Poconos, but and I didn't really talk very much about. There's only one place I mentioned myself and gave my information out to, but I don't even know where that's even located. Did you say she was born and raised there, or what's her connection with Titusville?
So her last name was Titus. And so, yep, the people who like kind of settled that town were Peter Titus and Daniel Titus, I believe. And those are her. So it was male, 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 male. And then like my grandma. And so she's the end of the male line in my family. And she loved the last name and like her heritage so much that she named my grandfather Roy Titus Elliott.
My goodness. Did you say she had an association with that town?
Yeah. So
is this not bizarre or what? This is very bizarre. I'm actually taken back by this right now because I'm going, first I'm puzzled about it, and then you bring it up here in our interview, and I'm like, and it's your grandmother's I don't know, association with creating or the creation of the name of that town and all that, and I'm like, I don't know. Is this supposed to be a sign of something? I don't know.
Yeah.
How do you take that when stuff like this is such a coincidence? Because I've never had that ever pop up before, ever. And then all of a sudden you hear, that just popped up on my website. Well, how do you think it's a sign, or what do you think is the underlying thing to it? People would say, oh, that's a coincidence. Well, okay, that's fine. That's a coincidence, but isn't this a little bit more than a coincidence? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't believe in coincidences. That's
I don't either.
For sure. Not at all. And I think it's kind of weird. I think it's a nod to the fact that we're already interwoven, like we're this collective consciousness, I feel like it's this nod or this wink wink to being interwoven in the universe, already knowing that you're going to be connecting with someone or you're getting connected with someone. And it's like a little wink or a nod to the fact that the universe already knows everything,
Yeah, I think that's just absolutely mind blowing. If I'll look it up on my website, and I will click on it and I will screenshot it for you, just so you can see when that happened. That didn't happen too long ago, so that's very fascinating. All right, so what age were you when you started recognizing that you had, like, I know you said that your dad once in a while, would get with you and wink, wink, nod, nod, but there had to be a point where yourself said wink, wink, nod, nod to yourself, like something was kind of going on. When do you think that happened, and what happened?
It's hard to pinpoint because it's been since I've been like, can remember a memory. I've been like a little mystic. I've been like, I think it's more looking back, realizing it's been since day one. And I don't really remember a time where I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm psychic. I think things would happen throughout my life. And then my mom would make a nod to it. My adoptive mom, she would like make mention of it because she believes in that stuff. And it would make me see that what I'm doing or how I am or how my personality is or how intuitive I am with other people and empathic with other people there might be something there that deeper. So it's not like a specific time in my life where I could point to, but looking back, I was doing things that were interconnected to the universe in that way. And I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I would go get lost in the woods. My parents had a beach cabin. I would go out in nature for hours by myself. I felt very connected to the earth, very connected to the elements. I used to, so because it was on the beach, it's in Washington in a place called Grapeview, I would, literally wait for it to start raining, and I would go and I would get in the water, the salt water of the Commencement Bay area, and I would sit in it. And I would it's cold plunging. I didn't realize I was cold plunging, but that's exactly what I was doing. And I would get out afterwards, take a hot shower, and it would be like, it's that, like, if you've ever cold plunged, that kind of like, euphoric feeling you get afterwards. So I was doing things like cold plunging, connecting to nature, and I didn't notice that's what it was until I look back, knowing what I know now, and go, oh my gosh, I've been doing this my whole life. That's really odd, Yeah. But I've always been intuitive. I've always been psychic. I've always had that extra. And I just thought that was normal. And then I didn't realize until later that maybe there's a little more open than everybody else around me for the most part, or for good portions of people around me. Yeah.
Well, and I don't know how your upbringing was when you went through your school years, but for me, as a contrast to you, I had things happening to me at 3, 4, 5 years old where I was having dreams and visions in my dreams that I would see on TV the next day in a black and white box TV, and it would be the exact same thing that I saw in my dream. But you see, back then, I'm 64 now, and that was like 60 years ago. I didn't know. I just thought it was kind of strange at some point that every time I turned on the TV, something that I had and these dreams were horrific. These were not anything happy and go lucky or anything like that. They were actually very traumatizing, airplane crashes, assassinations, people getting hurt, the whole 10 yards. And as I grew older, I thought it was my genetics, that I got a good set of genetics compared to everybody else, and that would explain why I was all knowing about things that were going to happen to people because of whatever. And then people would like look at me like I was half nuts, and then all of a sudden I'd just be quiet, but the stuff would keep happening. And I don't know. I mean, this whole thing about having abilities and psychic abilities and connecting with things and all that stuff, it was just kind of like a jiggy-joggy evolvement for me. How was it like for you going through school? Because, for me, I don't know where you grew up, but, where I grew up, we had cliques. We had this and that and all that kind of thing. So you're reacting and you're feeling and you're sensing and you're whatever. What was it like for you growing up? And did you ever sense things happening to the people around you that may have taken you by surprise or something else? How do you respond to that?
Well, I agree. I think that's kind of probably everyone's experience in terms of the cliquey and, being in one day, then you're out, or having issues really connecting with certain people, bullying and things of that nature. So for me, I always felt like I was 3 steps behind everybody else. Always felt like I was 3 steps behind, trying to catch up, trying to be normal, trying to be like the best friend that you have. Everybody thinks they're so great, they're so perfect. And then you're like, well, what am I? I'm the awkward one who's wearing like a Christmas sweater in May, and I'm like mismatched socks and, like all of those things. But yeah, I think that what it was being able to feel the like tonal shifts in the groups. So
Yep.
you could feel when you were about to be on the outs or when they were about to turn against you, you could feel it.
Yep.
So being prepared and knowing that the vibe is off or something's not right, very quickly and very easily, or knowing when someone new comes into the group and you know they're not right, but no one else notices it, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that 100%. Oh, and being 3 steps behind, I always felt 3 steps behind. I never really found I would say the right group. I've had groups back then take me in. I would say take me in, and then I felt awkward being in that group because then I felt like I didn't belong there. I belonged in a different kind of group. You know what I mean? So I never really had my place during that time. And as far as knowing things about people, yeah, I could feel the energies. I could definitely, I was very attuned to this, to how even someone may have felt about me, or whatever, for whatever reason. And then of course you get out of that whole scene, and I went on to college, and this whole new thing about all new groups and all new personalities and all that sort of thing came into play. So it is quite an involvement over time. So what would you say is your strongest Claire, and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. It's so interesting when you're doing mediumship. I always try to tell people, especially like my students and things of that nature, that clairs will change. You will start with really strong, two really strong, and then as you progress, they will change and your strong clairs will change, move around. I think that the hope at the end of the tunnel is that they all come back just as strong as each other, and you can bounce from clair to clair to clair as you're working as a medium, and I think that's kind of the goal. But for me, I would have to say that I get a different piece of information almost for every thing, and it kind of correlates to how you would receive it in the physical. So if I say, I want to show me a picture, I need a picture that they have that's sitting somewhere. Describe it to me. They will show it to me through my clairvoyance. If I want to know how they passed away, they're going to give it to me. And I start to cough. My lungs are feeling heavy. I feel tingles, or I feel a pain in my side, or something of that nature. So my clairs, I would have to say my strongest is probably clairsentience,
Yeah.
and clairvoyance, because I get physical sensations as if it's mine, like it's actually physically happening to me, which gives me a really good indicator of what is going on with the person and what they would like to talk about. Because when I work, everybody kind of has their way that they move into a reading. For me, I want to know who you are. Are you mom, dad, brother, sister, friend? Who are you? When did you die? How old were you? And what happened to you? How did you die? Those are the 3 things I always get. That's just me as a medium. So the clairsentience is right there with me. And they always use that to convey a message. Like, I died of a heart attack. I died of a stroke. I died of lung cancer. I had back pain. My kidneys were hurting me. And then the clairvoyance is really helpful for me because if I can see an image, great. Then I can use my clairsentience to move into the feeling of what is it that I'm seeing? What does that mean? So the clairsentience mixed with the clairvoyance is a really good powerhouse, although I'm getting clairaudience and things just dropping into my mind as well. So it's a good balance. But I would have to say, if you have clairsentience, you can figure the rest out through the other clairs. It's like, why have, like, oh, I see an apple. Okay, but why? Can you feel into that? Like, does it feel like grandma's cooking? Does it feel like, a special place that you used to go to? So it's about having those together. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you ever get a sensation of, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Depending on what's happening, I don't know. I've got to be very low energy for me to activate. I call it activating, meaning all of a sudden I become psychically very knowledgeable about lots of different things. I can tell you all kinds of things when I'm very low energy, and I hate being in that state of being because it's just very draining and it's very depressing and it's very tiring. But that's also when I'm the most gifted. I don't know if you've ever never heard of that before. People have always said to me, well, that's really strange because I would expect that you would have high frequency, like you're on top of a cloud or this or that or whatever, and then you can pick up everything. And that's not my experience for me. What is that experience like for you? Do you have to be kind of in a neutral zone, or do you have to be high, or do you have to be kind of low? How do you activate to your greatest ability?
I tend to be the medium that's in the off position at all times. I'm lucky that way. Not everybody is like that. As a matter of fact, a lot of mediums that I talk to tend to, at the beginning of their journey, had to learn how to stop that from going on, being bothered all the time or getting information all the time. I'm the total opposite. So I'm in the off position and I have to flip the switch on in order to work. And for that to happen for me, I definitely can't be frustrated, angry, tired, exhausted. I can't, or it won't work. It just gets really overwhelming and frustrating for me to make sense of anything or to be clear on anything. So I need to raise my vibration. So for me, it's things like doing things that make me feel really connected to source, which is like being out in nature, taking drives in nature, listening to music. All of those things are going to raise my vibration to where I feel like, ooh, I've dropped everything that is bothering me. I feel grounded. I feel here. I feel neutral, and a sense of like peacefulness and maybe some happiness and joy in there too. But it's a nice neutral, like grounded state. So when I'm the opposite, so it's like a little different for me when I'm tired and irritated and over it, I can't really connect very well. And it just doesn't work for me. So I guess for me, it's like, gotta be that high vibrational, like that traditional, oh, you need to have a high frequency. I'm kind of that, in order to be able to connect clearly. And a lot of it is draining out the stuff that's me. Draining out, and like you have to be a vessel, so you can't have your own crap in there. You got to get it out of there. So how do I do that? By putting myself in a nice, neutral, grounded space where I'm feeling good. Yeah.
Very interesting. I get channeled once in a while. I wrote. I was at my office one night, and something came to me and said, you need to write a whodunit murder mystery book. Now, keep in mind that I have never read one in my entire life. I'm not interested in writing that sort of thing. And something just absolutely insisted that I write not just one, but I ended up writing two whodunit murder mystery books. But I was channeled. So I'm going to ask you about, people are like, well, what does channeling mean? What are you talking about? I'm talking about when I am being fed the information, the ideas, the delivery of the story, the twists, the turns, and going, oh, okay, I'll take that out. And yeah, that's a better idea. And it's just, I don't know. Some people would say, no, that's your higher intuition. That's all knowing or whatever. It's like, I don't know. I've never been interested in that, but I've got two books on Amazon. I sell them at conferences once in a while. Have you ever been channeled? And what does that sound like to you? Because mine's not male or female. It's just kind of a voice that guides me in a trance-like state, and I just do as I'm being told. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
I don't do a ton of channeling, but I find it fascinating because I feel like it's people who are willing to literally put themselves in a state of complete surrender that are able to really do that. And I find it like so incredible because that kind of surrender, I tend to be a little bit of a control freak. I hate to say like I'm a control freak, but losing my mind in that way is a little bit harder for me. I'm like one of those people, if it's like, people who say, I can't get hypnotized. I can't. It's kind of like that, right? Because you can't let go.
Right.
But channeling is so fascinating because who wouldn't want to be able to receive this information without having to like rack your brain for this kind of stuff, and I'm a little jealous of people who can channel in that way because I find it's kind of like a offshoot of like automatic writing would be like channeling. And I can do automatic writing in certain situations and scenarios. So if I feel like I'm being blocked. I'm not getting the information. I will sit down with a pen and paper and I will just start to write. And then phrases will come out, things of that nature. But to channel a whole book, that's amazing to me. That's that's
I
another
did
level.
two of them too. It's like when I was done with the first one, I said, I don't ever want to see and write another whodunit book ever in my life. Next thing you know, it's like, I think you need to have one more to call it your series. I'm like, I don't need a series. I just want it over with. And so, yeah, I've got two of them out there. They're actually pretty good. I would say they're pretty good if you're a very easy read for a young person to whoever and all that sort of thing, with some quirky intermission, cartoony kind of things that I throw in there to show my sense or not sense of humor. But you know, the thing is someday if I ever meet you, we're going to go somewhere, and this will be a very interesting experiment, and I'll tell you why. Because I win a lot of jackpots at casinos where I have to pay the IRS, and I just recently won another one. And and I could have walked out of this other situation with another one, but I decided to hand it all back that night because I usually win very quickly. And within the first, 20 minutes. And when you drive a long way to a casino to do this, you don't want to say, oh, God, now I won, I can turn around and go home. I don't know. But I think it would be a very interesting study to have two people that seem to be kind of knowing, and I get channeled every time I go into a casino. I go into a trance-like state of being. I just say, guide me to the winning machine, and I hear go front, go left, go right, sit down. Sometimes I stand there and argue with myself, and I'm sure people think I'm a real crackpot, like, what's she doing? She's talking to herself. It's like, yeah, put me in a straitjacket and just get me out of here, and then I sit down, and within 20 minutes, bim, bam, boom, win. And so, but I think that, that would be very, very interesting if someday you and I could channel our way through a casino and see what kinds of thoughts we are. People have told me, and I just don't know how I do it, that I seem to have some kind of an influence on electronics. I don't really understand that very well because I have seen it though. I used to, elevator doors would be the first thing that I could say that I started to go, this is not a coincidence anymore. These babies just open up from the minute I approach them. It's too coincidental for that to happen. And there's just all kinds of things like that. What are your thoughts about that? Where do you think it's coming from? I don't think I was electrocuted when I was young, but I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that PK energy is that's real, man. That PK energy that some people have this tendency to project energetically in such a way that's it's just tangible. It's that psychokinetic energy that gets projected, and some people are great at it, and they're not even trying to do it. They're not even aware.
Yeah.
It's such a deep projection of that thick energy. My sister is that way as well. And she's not even trying to do it. It just bleeds off of her.
Yes.
And yeah, that's fascinating to me. PK energy is so fascinating to me, the way that it can manifest and the things that it's capable of. And it's really like the person, and it's like that separation of mind and your own energy, and the separation of knowing how powerful you actually are and not really being connected to that, but it's still happening,
Yeah, when I was younger and I went to a good psychic, someone that I came to, my very first psychic though ended up in jail. I should preface that. Yeah, sorry everybody. Not only on TV, but in jail. Okay, that was my first real experience with the psychic. And then I got a little bit more picky from there. All right, so the second psychic that I went to, that was actually pretty good. She told me, I didn't know what she was talking about at the age of 24. She's like, you have a very powerful mind or brain. You need to be careful how you use it. And I absolutely did not know what she was talking about. I really did. It's like, nothing happens when I can't lift that up. I can't do this. What are you talking about? And then as time went on, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a manifestation of internal anger or whatever I was bottling up or targeting or whatever. Some things had happened that I don't even speak of to this day, that I can honestly say I had a hand in it and I didn't mean to. And it's like there's going to be a lot of forgiving to God but I just didn't know. And then people would say that to me too. There's many things. I've had over 100 experiences. I've had many things move. I've had many things happen. And then people are in the debate. How do you know if you're doing it? How do you know if there's something around you, an apparition or something watching you, studying you, and doing it? What are your thoughts? How can you differentiate between a PK experience, which means you're doing it yourself because of your energies within your body or peeling off of you and creating these situations, versus an apparition or a presence that you have around you? Have you ever figured out how to differentiate that?
I feel like a good way to do it, or just a way to kind of test the waters, would to be like when you watch people who come into a space and say they're paranormal investigating, or they're trying to get to the bottom of something, and they are being told that all this stuff is happening around the house, things of that nature. Yep. So the person leaves so the paranormal investigators can start to investigate, and nothing's happening. Yep. Nothing's happening. It's just quiet, nothing. And then they bring that person back in and things start to happen. That's going to be a good indicator that it's probably coming from the person. Because if it's only happening when that person is in the space, it makes you kind of question, because if it's an apparition or some sort of spirit that is separated from the person, you should expect to see that kind of stuff going on without that person in the space. Mm-hmm. So I think doing a little bit of experimental work in that, say, okay, with them gone, what is it like? With them back, what is it like? Let's go again, see if it's quiet again. And it's just a little bit of experimental, and that can kind of cut out some of the questions about what is it, something in the space, or is it the person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know a lot of people would say, well, it didn't happen because it doesn't like you, or it's not going to react to you, but it likes the other person, so it'll throw a bone out there just to let you know. It is kind of confusing. So I'm going to bring up a situation just because I think it's fitting right now, and I think it's interesting, something that happened to me actually last night. And I'm gonna throw this at you, and I don't know if, as I tell the story, if you're able to pick up a read on it or whatever, but here we go. So by the time this airs, I will have been okay. I ended up in the emergency room in a hospital last night. For most of you that are listening to this right off the bat, yes, this is recent. For those of you who are seeing this show, it happened probably a couple months ago. And so this is what happened. So many of us know that some of the most haunted places are hospitals, nursing homes, abandoned hospitals, all kinds of state hospital institutions, all kinds of places that have a lot of crazy energy constantly coming in and out. Mm-hmm. And so for some reason last night, though, it was kind of strange. So I have, and I don't mind sharing, I have an infection in my stomach area, and it was very painful. And so, of course, I've been living with this for a couple days, so I finally ended up going to the emergency room. Well, last night seemed to have been a very interesting night on all accounts. Let me tell you, anything that could have gone wrong while I was there probably went wrong. Everything from the point of arrival to being forgotten about, to having things that were requested on a computer not showing up for a good hour and a half. Mm-hmm. Everything from just their processes to the final moment of getting all of this figured out as to what was wrong with me. leaving, but here's the interesting part. I had to use the restroom for a moment. My husband and I were leaving, and we walked by this closet. And it was a closet, not a room or anything. And you know, on TV, when you see the door start to jiggle like this, like 'cause something's in there wanting to get out of it, it stopped me in my tracks, and I started to stare at this closet that sounded like something was trying to get my attention or something was trying to get out of there. And I wasn't going to go open up the closet. Trust me. Okay. Yeah. But between the nurse saying, what's going on here, being forgotten, having that experience, and all these crazy things happening, one person might say, what's the moon phase like? Another one might say, are we in retrograde? Another one might say, that was just an odd coincidence. Maybe there's a pipe in there that causes the door to jiggle. No, I don't think so. You know, and all these things, and being forgotten in the room for over an hour and a half. And then they discover that I'm in the room and waiting for my CT scan to be done. And I could go on and on about all the things that went wrong. So here's a question for you regarding what happened last night. So, have you ever investigated, Brooke, any kind of a, I don't know, I can't really say a hospital that's in motion, maybe, or a regular hospital that's abandoned or anything like that? And what would cause something to want to hang around a hospital, for God's sakes, but most importantly, cause these chain of events? Some people would say, oh, that was just sloppy work. No, not all of it was sloppy work. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? Are you picking up a feel of what just happened here? I don't know.
Yeah, when we're talking about, well, it's funny you said, because I know that you had said you had an infection, but you didn't say, and I wrote down headaches, upper rib pain.
Yeah.
So I was like writing it down, and then you said stomach. I was like, oh, interesting. But I think that people, it goes kind of back to that PK energy thing. So I'm going to kind of express something that I believe here. So when we have the PK energy and it's like filling the space. So we're talking about people who are in a space every single day coming through there who are in pain. They are, maybe they're on something, right? And they come in and they're putting this energy of franticness, of confusion, of pain into the space. And I highly believe that that type of energy, it's so thick and palpable, it creates what we call an egregore. And then egregores stay in the space. They almost become their own entity. Even though it's coming from PK energy from a person, it goes into the space and creates its own separate entity, which then stays in the location and really can be intelligent. It can be an intelligent haunt. It can cause poltergeist activity. I don't always think that poltergeist activity is coming just from someone with PK energy. I feel like poltergeist activity can also come from an egregore, because that egregore was created by PK energy from somebody who then left the building or facility. So I feel like sometimes these things that end up in the spaces then keep feeding and feeding. They feed on the chaos. They feed on the confusion. They feed on the anger and the frustration that people are feeling. So what's happening is this egregore just kind of is like, ooh, dinner. And they're just, like, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. But it feeds them. It feeds that egregore. So that could have been what was going on. And the frustration that was being caused by everything that was going on, and your PK energy on top of it, was feeding it so much that it could manifest into a space where it's like shaking the door. It
was. Yeah. The door was creepy. It's like something you see on TV, or when people are like, look at this doorknob. It's shaking like something's trying to either get in or whatever. That's exactly there was nobody in the hallway. There was nobody really around. It was just me and my husband and this closet door, just absolutely like something was trying to. And I didn't think at first, am I doing that? I didn't think that at first. I thought because when the nurse came in and she said, She was looking on the computer. She goes, "Oh, this is really weird." And of course, they can't say what's weird, but she did kind of express it after the fact. She said, "What's weird is that these notes were put in an hour ago, and they just came to me now." It says, and it's like, this is weird. And I knew I wasn't going to tell her what I did for a living. I wasn't going to go there. I just sat back and I thought, yeah, isn't this weird? I sat in this room unnecessarily for an hour, hour and a half, waiting to get my CT scan done. And then all these things are just going awry. Literally, everybody's screwing up in every which direction. You can't even, it's like they're sitting there trying to correct all of these things. But that was the most interesting part, is that messages that should have gotten to her saying, what's her result? Did she get her CT scan done yet? Is it over with? It just flooded all of a sudden at her. And that door shaking was the icing on the cake, because I know that was not a pipe. I know there was nothing behind there. It was just a closet, and I was just sitting there rattling. Very interesting. You've been on many investigations. Have you ever seen a door rattle like I described before? And what do you think about that?
I personally haven't seen anything door-wise while I'm doing a paranormal investigation, but I will tell you, growing up, I lived in the most haunted locations of life, and there was a lot of door stuff in my home growing up. So opening and slamming of like those fully solid spring back doors, things of that nature. So I've experienced it. Wildly enough, not during a paranormal investigation, though, just living my life. And it kind of goes back to, is that my sister's PK energy that was kind of pumping the space? Was it mine? Was it both? Yeah, definitely. I've seen some wild stuff. We just caught a full body apparition, just a black shadow figure of a woman passing through our camera when we were in Butte, Montana at Silver Bow Center. So that's wild. But doors slamming and things of that nature, shaking. No, I would have been so out of there. I would have been like, I'm out of here.
No, I just stood there. My husband and I, we just both looked at it. And it was because I'm so used to this. I've had so many, most people though, you're right. Most people would get, holy cow, holy crap, and they would just beeline out of there. No, I just stood there like, this is like the icing on the cake, isn't it? I looked at my husband. He's like, well, maybe it's just something blah, blah, blah. And he knew, even when he said that, he knew that he couldn't even believe what he said. And as we left, he's like, yeah, kind of reminds me of, some of the situations I've been in the past where a haunt was very obvious and all that. Yeah. That shadow figure, I have a question about that. So why do you, I've captured some very good shadows. Got it. Perfect. My question would be, do you think they want to be seen when they pass by like that? Do they know that they're being seen? What are your thoughts about that? Because I have seen a few. I've captured a few. And I think in those cases, they've wanted to be noticed. What are your thoughts on shadow figures?
I think that it can be different depending on the space and what's going on in the space. So example, when we were at Silver Bow Center, the shadow figure passing by was passing through like two doorways that were side to side, one here and then one here and then another door in front of it that was closed, but these were like kind of walkways or doorways, and they were a little bit illuminated. And the woman who walks past has her hand behind her like in a stabbing motion, and she's just walking. And I feel like that has gotta be like a buildup of my energy, because I'm an evidential medium. I'm a medium. I'm in the space. I'm reading it because the person who I'm with wants me to tell them, what am I seeing? What's going on? So they can validate it. They're like, what are you getting? So it's like me projecting my energy into the space so I can read it and understand it. Then you have people in a space. This building is not rife with people all the time. It's kind of an empty building. Yeah. So it's like, okay, there's energy in this building now. So I feel like it just projects itself into a replay of something that happened in that building prior. And it allows us to kind of see it in that space. It's just this projected energy until this residual kind of thing happens. But I know that there are other shadow figures that have been caught that seem more intelligent. And for that, I would say, like, I believe in the egregore sort of situation as well. I believe that it's just this heavy, deep energy that I think allows it to just feed off of it and create that kind of manifesting that happens. But you can have both. I feel like you can have a shadow figure that's residual, and you can have a shadow figure that is intelligent. And there's probably something different happening in each space, depending on where you're at, who's there, what's the energy normally like. Are they able to feed off of certain types of energy? It's just different each time. So I guess I'd have to look at what was happening in the space when that was caught.
What we're going to do here is let's tell everybody a little bit about how they can reach out to you and get a hold of you and stuff. So why don't we start with, let's start with just the general of reaching out to you if they want to either ask a question or try and get a reading from you. Let's start with that.
Absolutely. So getting a hold of me, messaging me is probably best to find me on my Facebook account, which is Mediumship with Brooke Ashley. And Brooke Ashley has a dash in between. So Facebook Mediumship with Brooke Ashley. You can always send me a message if you have a question, you just want to kind of pick my brain. That's a great place to get a hold of me. If you would like to book a reading with me, then you could do that on my website, which is mediumbrookeashley.com, no spaces. So just mediumbrookeashley.com, that's my website. And that's where you can find bookings for mediumship readings. You can also find events that I will be doing in person there and possibly get tickets for any events that I'm going to be at on my website. Also, any classes I'm teaching should also be on my website as well.
Oh, that's really good. And then again, we're talking Facebook, Instagram. Did you say you're on TikTok? Can't remember.
I am. So TikTok is going to be Earthly Imprint Paranormal. That's one of our biggest accounts. I do mediumship on there as well, but that's kind of for our paranormal team, which is Earthly Imprint Paranormal. And that would be the same name on every social media account. So Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, you can find us at Earthly Imprint Paranormal.
And then I think one of the other things we talked about briefly at the beginning, just before the show started, you have a series now, or is this just a single event series, The Whispers Beyond the Veil? Talk a little bit about that.
Whispers Beyond the Veil is a fun thing that I've been able to incorporate to my YouTube channel, which is my podcast, Spectre and Spooks podcast on YouTube. That's where it's streamed through StreamYard. But I have dropped for October a Halloween series, which is really fun, really cool, really spooky mini stories. So it's just a series throughout October of mini stories to kind of get you in the mood for Halloween, spook ya. And I narrate those stories. So you can find Whispers Beyond the Veil on Spectre and Spooks podcast on YouTube.
On YouTube, yep. Well, that I will make sure this all gets into the show notes. Really good stuff. Very interesting, very intriguing tonight. And again, we'll have to have you back just to see what you've been up to. And again, on behalf of the show and myself, thank you so very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching and listening to Haunted Mysteries Podcast. The content, music, and creative sound effects, as heard on the Haunted Mysteries Podcast, are copyrighted and licensed commercially to Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Please do not reproduce in any manner without the express permission of Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz, Diamond Point Entertainment, LLC, Paranormal Universal Press, LLC, Haunted Mysteries Podcast, and or any affiliated networks such as the Get Haunted Podcast Network. The opinions and information expressed by the guest, hosts, and sources as heard and seen on the Haunted Mysteries Podcast are not necessarily those of Diamond Point Entertainment, LLC, Paranormal Universal Press, LLC, Haunted Mysteries Podcast, and the Get Haunted Podcast Network, as well as its producers. Although the content of the shows may be interesting, the information and opinions within are deemed for entertainment purposes only. Subscribe to continue your enjoyment and interest, and thank you for making Haunted Mysteries Podcast part of your day.